idea occurred to her that she was being murdered, but she could not be certain.
There had been subtle signs, little suspicions, and for almost a month.
Dun dun dun!
A room floated around her.
Dun dun dun!
Sharp instruments hovered.
Dun dun dun!
There were voices.
And people in sterile white masks.
Dun dun dun!
My name, she thought. What is it?
Alice Leiber. It came to her. David Leiber's wife.
I'm being murdered before their eyes. These doctors and these nurses don't realize what a hidden things has happened to me. David doesn't even know. Nobody knows except him and
Dun dun dun! The killer, the little murderer, the small assassin.
They'll see the murderer. They'll even hold him, but they will never think him responsible for my death.
Footsteps. Gentle approaching footsteps.
No, I'm not. I'm awake.
David stood over her. Moving a weak hand, she pulled aside the coverlet. The murderer looked up at David Leiber with a small, red-faced, blue-eyed calm. Its eyes were deep and sparkling.
What? She's a fine baby.
Dr. Jeffers was waiting for David Leiber the day he came to take his wife and new child home.
Your wife doesn't like her child, Dave.
What?
I didn't say much at the time, but she was hysterical in the delivery room. The strange things she said, I won't repeat them. All I'll say is she feels alien to the child.
We planned it together. I was so happy a year ago when...
That makes it more difficult.
Dr. Jeffers rubbed his hand across his jaw.
Scratch, 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 scratch.
It might be the single temporary doubt and distrust of any mother who's gone through the unusual pain and near death that Alice has. If so, then a little time should heal that. I thought I'd tell you though, Dave. It'll help you be easy and tolerant with her if she says anything about, well, about wishing the child had been dead. If things don't go well, the three of you drop in on me.
After dinner, she let him carry the baby upstairs. She didn't tell him to, she let him. Coming down, he found her standing by the radio, listening to music she didn't hear. She started when he appeared. She crushed his hand in hers, a supernatural whiteness in her white face.
Oh, Dave, once it was just you and me. We protected each other, and now we protect the baby, but get no protection from it. The world is evil.
It is?
Yes, it is. And when there aren't laws, then love does the protecting. But what about the baby? It's too young to know love, or a law of love, or anything until we teach it. And in the meantime, be vulnerable to it.
Vulnerable to a baby?
He held her away and laughed gently.
Her arms dropped from him and she turned swiftly. That noise, what was it? Leiber looked around the room. I didn't hear. And there, he said slowly. Not a thing. He came back to her. You're worn out. To bed with you, right now. Turning up the bike, they walked slowly up the soundless hall stairs, not speaking. She paused, undecided by the nursery door. Then she turned the brass knob sharply, walked in. He watched her approach the crib, much too carefully. David! The baby's face was bright red and very moist. His small pink mouth opened and shut. Open and shut. His eyes were fury blue. His hands stood about on the air. Oh, said Dave. He's just been crying. Has he? I didn't hear him. The door was closed. Is that why he breathed so hard? Why his face is red? Sure, poor little guy. Crying all alone in the dark. He can sleep in our room tonight. Just in case.
Forgot to tell you, I must fly to Chicago on Friday.
I'm afraid. I don't know of what. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. I guess I'm crazy.
He said.
If you want me to wait a few days, perhaps I could.
No.
She said, unconvinced.
You go. I know it's important.
The baby lay wide awake in its crib, staring straight at him with deep, sharp eyes.
It's not nice being afraid of the thing you birthed.
Her whisper lowered, became harsh, fierce, swift.
He tried to kill me. He lies there, listening to us talking, waiting for you to go away so he can try to kill me again. I swear it.
Sobs broke from her.
Please!
He kept saying, soothing her.
Stop it! Stop it, please!
She cried in the dark for a long time. He drowsed, and just before his eyes lidded wearingly down, sinking him deeper, he heard a strange little sound of awareness and awakeness in the room. The baby, and then sleep.
In the morning, the sun blazed. Alice smiled. Dave Lieber dangled his watch over the crib.
See, baby, something bright, something pretty. Sure, something bright, something pretty.
Alice smiled. She told him to go ahead, fly to Chicago. She'd be brave. No need to worry. She'd take care of the baby. Oh, yes, she'd take care of him all right. On the evening of the 6th day away from home, he received a long-distance phone call.
Alice?
No, Dave, this is Jeffrey speaking.
Doctor.
Alice is sick. You better get the next plane home. It's pneumonia. I'll do everything I can. If only it wasn't so soon after the baby. She needs strength.
In the late afternoon sunlight, Dr. Jeffers stood turning from the window as Alice lay waiting in her bed, something carved from a fall of a winter snow.
Your wife's too good a mother, Dave. She worried more about the baby than herself, tired herself right into pneumonia.
Dave fell ill.
The baby. What about the baby?
Fit as a fiddle.
Thanks, doctor.
The doctor walked off and was gone.
David! He turned to her frightened whisper. It was the baby again. She clutched his hand. I try to lie to myself and say that I'm a fool, but the baby knew I was weak from the hospital. So he cried all night, every night. And when he wasn't crying, he'd be much too quiet. I knew if I switched on the light, he'd be there, staring at me. David felt his body close in on itself like a fist. He remembered seeing the baby, feeling the baby, awake in the dark, awake very late at night when baby should be asleep, awake and lying there, silent as thought, not crying, but watching its crib. He thrust the thought aside. It was insane.
Thing to do. He did it. He walked into Dr. Jeffers' office and told him the whole thing and listened to Dr. Jeffers' tolerant replies.
Let's take this thing slowly. It's quite natural for mothers to hate their children sometimes. You won't admit it, naturally. People don't enjoy admitting hatred for their loved ones.
So Alice hates her baby.
Better say she has an obsession. She blames the child for her near death and her pneumonia. All I can ask you is that what I told you before. Find ways of showing her how harmless and innocent the child is. Make her feel that the baby is worth the risk. If she doesn't come around in the next month or so, ask me. I'll recommend a good psychiatrist.
Things seemed to settle down and become easier, except one certain midnight when a summer wind swept around the house. Alice wakened, trembling. She said,
"Something is here in the room watching us."
He switched on the light.
"Dreaming again,"
he said.
"You're better, though. Haven't been troubled in a long time."
She sighed as he clicked off the light again, and suddenly she slept. He heard the bedroom door sway open a few inches. There was nobody at the door, no reason for it to come open. The wind had died. He waited. It seemed like an hour he lay silently in the dark.
Then, far away, the baby began to cry in his nursery.
Lieber counted to 100 slowly. The crying continued.
He'd go downstairs, he thought, fix some warm milk, bring it up, and... The blackness dropped out from under him. His foot slipped and plunged, slipped on something soft, plunged into nothingness.
He thrust his hands out, caught frantically at the railing. His body stopped falling. He held. He cursed.
He groped carefully with his fingers for the object that had almost spilled him headlong down the stairs.
His hand froze, startled. His breath went in. His heart held 1 or 2 beats.
The thing he held in his hands was a toy, a large, cumbersome patchwork doll he had bought as a joke for
the baby.
The next day's work went uneasily. At the end of the day, he was exhausted. His head throbbed, and he was glad to be home. The late sunlight streamed down the stairwell from the window near the top of the hall. Where sunlight touched, it took out the brighter color of the patchwork doll sprawled at the bottom of the stairs. But he paid no attention to the toy. Alice lay in a broken, grotesque pallet, gesturing and angling her thin body at the bottom of the stairs, like a crumpled doll that doesn't want to play anymore, ever. Alice was dead.
He stood up. He must have made a phone call. He didn't remember. He found himself suddenly upstairs. He opened the nursery door and walked inside and stared blankly at the crib. His stomach sick. He couldn't see very well.
She's dead,
said Lieber to the baby.
She's dead. Oh, oh, oh.
Then he started laughing low and soft and continuously for a long time until Dr. Jeffers walked in and slapped him again and again across the face.
Snap out of it. Pull yourself together.
She fell down the stairs. Doctor, she tripped on a patchwork doll and fell. I almost slipped on it the other night myself, and now...
The doctor said nothing.
Alice wasn't crazy.
Lieber said slowly.
She had a good reason to fear the baby.
Jeffers exhaled.
Don't follow after her. She stumbled on a toy. Remember that. You can't blame the child.
Lieber shook his head.
Alice heard things at night moving in the halls. You want to know what made those noises, Doctor? They were made by the baby. And if I turn on the lights, a baby is so small, it can hide behind furniture, a door, against a wall, below eye level.
I want you to stop this,
said Jeffers.
It was simple. Leave a toy on the stairs, cry in the night until your father goes downstairs to fetch your milk, and stumbles. A crude trick, but effective. It didn't get me, but it killed Alice. Dead.
Jeffers scowled and shook his head helplessly.
Lieber's voice was very soft, very low.
My little baby girl, lying in her crib nights, her face moist and red and out of breath.
From crying?
No, from climbing slowly out of her crib, from crawling long distances through darkened hallways. My little baby girl, I want to kill her.
The doctor handed him a water glass and some pills.
You're not killing anyone. You're going to sleep for 24 hours. Sleep will change your mind. Take this.
The doctor waited until he was moving deep into sleep, then left the house.
Lieber alone drifted down.
He heard a noise.
What? What is that?
He demanded feebly.
Something moved in the hall.
Dave, Lieber, slept.
Very early the next morning, Dr. Jeffers drove up to the house. Lieber would still be asleep. Jeffers tried the front door, found it open, stepped in.
Something white moved out of the side at the top of the stairs. Just a suggestion of movement. Jeffers hardly noticed.
The smell of gas was in the house.
Jeffers ran upstairs and crashed into Lieber's bedroom. Lieber lay motionless on the bed, and the room billowed with gas, which hissed from a release jet at the base of the wall near the door. Jeffers twisted it off, then forced up all the windows and ran back to Lieber's body.
The body was cold. It had been dead for quite a few hours. Coughing violently, the doctor hurried from the room, eyes watering. Lieber hadn't turned on the gas himself. He couldn't have. Those sedatives had knocked him out. He wouldn't have wakened until noon.
Stood in the hall for 5 minutes, then walked to the door of the nursery. It was shut. He opened it. He walked inside into the crib. The crib was empty. He stood swaying by the crib for half a minute. Then he said something to nobody in particular.
The nursery door blew shut. You couldn't get back into your crib where it was safe. You didn't plan on the door blowing shut. A little thing like a slammed door can ruin the best of plans.
The doctor looked dazed. He put his hand to his head and smiled palely.
Nah, I'm talking like Alice and David talk, but I can't take any chances. I'm not sure of anything, but I can't take any chances.
He walked downstairs and opened his medical bag and on the chair and took something out of it and held it in his hands.
Something rustled down the hall, something very small and very quiet. Jeffers turned rapidly.
I had to operate to bring you into this world, he thought. Now I guess I could operate to take you out of it.
He took half a dozen slow, sure steps forward into the hall. He raised his hand into the sunlight.
See, baby, something right, something great. Cronky, a scalpel.